So this is a video that I've been wanting to make for like a month or two now, and I've been really positive and hyped for the upcoming DCU in all my videos so far, and I'm absolutely engrossed in the hype for next year's Superman movie. The crest, the costume, all the talk and hype around all of it is so exciting. The casting is really exciting. It's really fun to kind of get these constant updates about the movies in the universe, and the upcoming slate seems really cool for the most part, but there are some issues that I do still kind of have, and there may be more worries than issues, but they're all kind of related to some of the fundamental things that the DC universe are doing so far. But I feel like DC movie fans just in general have trust issues, because the entire 10 years of the DCEU was filled with broken promises, constantly having things or returns announced, just to find out 6 months later that it's actually not happening. And I guess some of that is still carrying over to the DCU for me, where it feels like I can't fully get excited or get hyped or trust that all these projects are going to come out, because the DCEU really burnt me in terms of a DC cinematic universe, like when you'd get excited for one aspect and then nothing would come of it. And as someone who would say that they've always been more of a DC TV fan than a DC movie fan, it also doesn't leave a good impression that every single DC TV show under the sun was being massacred and cancelled around the same time that James Gunn was announcing his upcoming movie slate. Like, we were seeing 10 years of the Arrowverse, and after 800 episodes being cancelled, and then hearing, oh hey, get excited for the new DC movies. Like, cool, but maybe it would have been nice to get, I don't know, like Legends of Tomorrow, for example, a quick 10 or 6 episode final season to wrap things up, especially since they were cancelled in 2022, and we've had barely any DC content, and we will barely have any DC content until next year. A lot of these shows that were cancelled could have been given quick final season wrap-ups that would have already come out by now, and not at all interfered with the movie slate. Superman and Lois seems to be one of the only shows that was kind of cancelled, but given the opportunity to wrap up on their own terms. Flash Season 9 even, which did get to go out on their own terms, has had a lot of the cast and crew come out and talk about what their 10th season plans were, which makes you kind of question how much of a show ending has been any of these guys' choice. But really quickly, I just want to mention the DC slate we know of and where I kind of feel about each project. Just kind of a quick, yeah I'm hyped, yeah I'm not sort of thing. So Superman, extremely hyped. I've got some good feelings about this film. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, also extremely hyped. I think the casting is great and what we've heard about the script is really exciting. Batman Brave and the Bold, I could do it out, but I'm looking forward to seeing the contrast between this Batman and Pattinson's Batman. I think they'll be very different. To me though, I'm definitely a little less into Batman than most people, because I kind of just think him and his rogues gallery are so overused in DC, but you also can't have a DC movie slate without some sort of Batman representation on here, so I get it. Like, for me, a Batman film, I'm like, yeah, I've seen a lot of them, but I get that for a DC movie slate, you kind of need something related to Batman on it. Swamp Thing, I wasn't too hyped until James Mangold was announced as director. He's one of my all-time faves, so that really brought me on board. Lanterns, a TV show that's inspired by True Detective with Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart. Hell fucking yes, this absolutely sounds amazing, sounds so great. I could not be more on board with this. Booster Gold, another TV show, also definitely yes. Booster Gold needs more serious rep in DC. Paradise Lost, the Amazonian TV show that's said to be inspired by Game of Thrones. A little less of a yes than the first two, but still definitely think this could be a really cool show, and I want to see what they do. The Authority, to me it depends what they do with this. If they go with it like it's the 7 from The Boys or just another Suicide Squad, then pass. If there was a very nuanced, fresh take on a somewhat angrier Justice League, then this could be really cool. The Arkham series, feel weird about this one because it was very clearly originally in the Pattinson universe. We have articles and quotes from Matt Reeves that confirm this was originally a Matt Reeves show. And then when Gunn came out and said it was always a DCU series, it made me feel so weird, because this does feel like a weird show on this slate. And it also gives me the same vibes as earlier, where I'd be okay if we didn't get as much Batman-focused content in the DCU because of the Pattinson universe, and maybe focus on a lot of the other characters and franchises a little bit more instead. Creature Commandos, animated TV show coming out later this year. I think this is fine in concept. It's definitely a James Gunn style project, but I'm not at all happy with this being the first project in the DCU. I'll talk more about this in a little bit, but first project, I don't think that's the right idea. Waller, another TV show heavily tied to Peacemaker. I think a show focused on Waller is really cool, as long as it isn't just another Suicide Squad. Tying it heavily to Peacemaker though gives me some bad vibes that are connected to some of my fundamental issues with the early DCU, so I'll come back to this in a few. And Peacemaker Season 2, the first season was great, but this is also a project that I think is the wrong move for your early DCU. So we don't know exactly when anything after Superman is coming out, but since Peacemaker Season 2 is filming towards the end of Superman's filming, it looks like the very first projects in our brand new DC Cinematic Universe are Creature Commandos later this year, Superman in early July 2025, and Peacemaker Season 2 potentially like August or September 2025. And while Superman is obviously a perfect choice for so early in the DC universe, I think shows like Creature Commandos and Peacemaker Season 2 are really, really weird and not a great way to start what is supposed to be a completely fresh universe that is supposed to be bringing in new people. Really making the DC name and brand fresh for a new audience, because unfortunately after a lot of the DCEU, the brand is a little tainted to a general audience. And I think having a project that is so fundamentally tied to the old DCU being one of your first 3 projects, it's just a bad decision. I think you start with Superman, you do Lanterns, you do Brave and the Bold, even maybe Supergirl. You do some projects that are going to ease a general audience into this universe and into these characters. And one of the major complaints with the DCEU back in 2016 and 2017 was that a lot of people felt like Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Suicide Squad was a really strange first 3 film debut. I remember a lot of people saying it was like if the MCU started with Iron Man, but then did Captain America Civil War as their second film and followed it up with Guardians of the Galaxy. And I kind of get the same vibes here, where it's like, this is a very strange lineup to debut your new cinematic universe. Now, I want to give the benefit of the doubt to Gunn and Safran here, because James Gunn has already talked about how the TV shows aren't going to be necessary viewing, and I think DC Studios are learning from some of Marvel Studios' mistakes, where over there the Disney Plus shows became integral to the Marvel films, and it was clear that there was a sizable chunk of the audience that didn't want to watch the shows or weren't watching the shows. And DC Studios is rightfully leaning away from that and learning that maybe the shows should be there to expand the universe and expand on certain characters, but not be where the major plot points happen. Save that for the films. But even with that said, The Authority is very likely the second or third film, and this is also a very Suicide Squad or Guardians of the Galaxy-esque kind of film, and to a lesser degree than Peacemaker and Creature Commandos, I'm not totally on board with the idea of that being one of our first projects, but I'm also very willing to wait and see. The plan for this film and these characters could make perfect sense within the context of the story that the early DCU was telling. But a reason why I'm drawing so much attention to this is because I'm trying to think about someone who isn't currently a DC fan and how they would feel going into a new DC universe. The reason why the MCU succeeded to such a vast degree up until Avengers Endgame was because they got a lot of more casual movie fans on board with their universe. They turned a lot of people who weren't traditionally comic book or superhero fans into those fans, and into people who would see a Marvel film no matter what because it was always a guaranteed good or fun time. DC, especially with the DCEU, was never able to get a general audience on board with their universe. Batman is obviously a serious outliner in terms of his popularity, and for DC in general, and certain DCEU films did extremely well, such as the first Aquaman being one of the only 2 DC films to ever cross $1 billion at the box office. The other film was Dark Knight Rises that crossed $1 billion, so Batman. But in general, the DCEU films never did as well as they should have in comparison to the characters they were showcasing. Marvel were able to make so many films be absolute juggernauts at the box office, which is what matters here for the franchises. Quality is obviously hugely important, but if these films aren't making money, they're not going to continue with them. And my absolute biggest fear with the upcoming DCU is that Superman, The Authority, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, Swamp Thing could be barely breaking even, maybe even bombing, who knows, and Warner Bros. Discovery is such a reactionary company. They were reactionary back in the mid-2010s during the DCEU, constantly changing and cancelling projects based off of how the most recent projects performed, and they're even more reactionary now because they're practically bankrupt. They can't afford to release a certain amount of movies every year anymore because they don't have the money to properly market and release them. That was the heavy rumour back when Shazam! Fury of the Gods was pushed from December 2022 to March 2023, was that Warner Bros. Just simply could not afford to release Shazam and Black Adam in the same amount of months. They had to push Shazam to the following year so that they could afford to release it. So I am terrified if the first 2 or 3 films simply don't make the money that it's expected to make. We'll see the entire DCU fall apart before it can even get off the ground, because I can easily see people like David Zaslav expecting the DCU to be generating money almost instantly and then deciding it's not worth the cost when the first projects aren't performing amazingly well. We've seen so many cinematic universes over the past decade try and recreate the MCU and then fail after their first few projects either critically or financially don't do well, and this brings me back to what I was saying about Creature Commandos and Peacemaker, to a much lesser degree The Authority. I'm not sure if these are great projects that will serve as a welcome and as an entry point to an audience that is trying to get into DC and into this new cinematic universe. A general audience is not going to feel like watching these films if they feel like they need to do homework to understand what's going on. And Gunn has said that Peacemaker Season 1 is not canon, that Season 2 is in the DCU and that Season 1 isn't, so you don't need to watch Season 1. But I still think from an outside perspective, this might be kind of confusing to people who are just trying to enjoy a new superhero franchise. They hear, oh, Peacemaker is a TV show in the same universe as the new Superman film, let me check it out. Oh, there are 2 seasons. oh wait, this first season is connected to the old DC stuff, Ezra Miller's Flash and Jason Momoa's Aquaman are in this, do I need to watch The Flash or Aquaman then? I think it's a very slippery slope where you're potentially creating a problem where you're turning away viewers before they get involved. A lot of people have heard about the DCEU, heard how messy it was and how bad it could get, and as soon as they hear the new DCU already has some characters reprising their roles or some TV shows that have 2 seasons with one of them being in that old universe, they're maybe going to want to steer clear. And I think if the DCU is going to succeed with a new audience, it needs to be completely a fresh start. They shouldn't be picking things that they liked or things that worked from the old DCU and carrying it over. We should be looking at something that to a new audience has nothing to do with the old movies. Now obviously I don't want the DCU to be like the MCU at all. DC needs to have its own fresh look, its own fresh style. We've been in the superhero movie renaissance for like 10 years now. I hear a lot of people saying the bubble's going to pop soon and that we're going to reach a point where the amount of comic book and superhero films are just not coming out nearly as much, or the amount we're getting will drop drastically in the same way like Western films stopped being as big after the 60s. Maybe, definitely think eventually things are going to slow down, and it might feel like the DCU is already coming a bit late since even the MCU is struggling quite heavily at the moment. But I also think a really well done DC universe that fleshes out how interesting and unique and different these characters can be is something an audience will run to if it's good. I just think you need to start really strong, and while projects like Peacemaker and Commandos will definitely set the DCU apart from the MCU, I'm not convinced these are the right choices or really give an idea of what a proper DC universe could or should be, in the same veins like Lanterns or Supergirl One of Tomorrow will be. But we'll see. Again, this is very much a when they come out they could really surprise me kind of deal. Didn't love the idea of making this video because I do hate to be overly negative on these kind of things, especially when we still have a long time until we start seeing these projects. But DC is so important to me and I want to see a proper DC universe. I want to get to a point where we can have all of these amazing characters interacting and having a story to tell in the way the MCU used to do with so many of their characters. So I want this to succeed, and it's something worrying about how easily this could all fail a little bit. Mainly because I also don't trust Warner Bros. To treat this properly, but DC's past failures have really made it hard to feel safe and secure when something new gets announced, but again, we'll see. Anyway, how are you feeling about the upcoming DCU? Are you excited, worried? Do you share any of these feelings? Do you think anything I'm onto here is right? Do you think I'm being too negative and things will be fine? Let me know, and if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, and all of that. I hope you have a great day.